Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're doing another top 5 videos. I'm really excited to you guys because we're actually going to be doing top 5 decks for $25 or less. And I have some amazing decks on this list for you guys. So for the purpose of the video, we're just going to be talking about the deck core. We're not going to be talking about all the staples that are mixed into the deck, because staples can be really expensive or very, very cheap. Some examples of some very expensive staples would be cards like Ash Blossom, Forbidden Droplets, and even cards like Evenly Matched. They're really expensive cards that range from anywhere from $90 all the way down to $20, when you can change those cards out for more affordable staples like Effect Veiler, Monster Reborn, and even cards like Torrential Tribute that are as much as $2 and as little as 5 cents, depending on which rarity you decide to pick up of those cards. So for the purpose of the video, we're just going to be assuming that you're going to use budget staples for these decks, so we're not taking that into account when picking up these deck cores. So without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test hands. And let's get straight on into the list, guys. Coming in at the number 5 slot, guys, I have a deck that you won't have to put in overtime to pick it up, and that deck is Time Thieves. Time Thieves is a fantastic rank 4 base deck that lets you summon out all sorts of different rank 4 monsters, having one of the best in archetype rank 4s in the entire game in the form of Time Thief Redoer, which is actually the boss monster for this deck. The card is absolutely insane because during each standby phase you can actually attach a material from the top of your opponent's deck to it as a material, which is a great effect for this card to have. And depending on what type of card you have attached to it and then you detach from it depends on the different effects that it gets. From being able to banish itself from till the end phase if you detach a monster, to being able to draw a card if you detach a spell, to even having its most powerful effect, in my opinion, to bounce a card off the field if you detach a trap card. That card is an absolutely insane boss monster for this deck. It's primarily a rank 4 base deck, but it has one of the best normal summons in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion, in the form of Time Thief Regulator, that if you don't control another monster, you can tribute it to special summon out 2 Time Thieves from your deck, one of which will normally be your Time Thief Winder, which is actually a searcher for just about every Time Thief card in the deck, which is a great effect for this deck to have. I absolutely love this deck, and it's a super cheap deck as well because the most expensive card in the entire deck is $3.50, with it being Time Thief Adjuster, which is a fantastic 3 of in this deck, but everything else in the entire deck is sitting around 25 cents or less, which helps out the budget of this deck. I absolutely love this deck as well because you can include all sorts of budget rank 4s, like copies of Tornado Dragon and Abyss Dweller, and even your copies of your Time Thief Redoer as boss monsters for the deck to ultimately control the board. It's a fantastic deck if you're looking for an XZ deck, and I absolutely love the way that it plays. At number 4, guys, we have a deck that is hands down one of the cutest and most wholesome decks ever created in Yu-Gi-Oh! Just sheerly because of the artwork, and that deck is Milfy. I love this deck. It's a fun deck to play around with because all of your monsters, when they're on the field, share a similar effect that when your opponent normal or special summons a monster or targets any of your Milfy monsters for attacks, they bounce back to your hand and then do really awesome things. For example, your copies of Milfy Puppy, when it's on your side of the field and it bounces back to the hand, it actually lets you special summon a level 2 or lower beast to your side of the field, whereas your Milfy Caddy will have a similar effect but actually searches a beast monster from your deck to your hand, which has a lot of generic beast cards in the archetype and some really awesome tech cards that you can include in this deck that your copies of Caddy can search. It's primarily a rank 2 base deck, but you can make it a link base deck to make it even more budget, which is a really awesome thing for this deck. I love the way the deck plays, and it is hands down one of the cutest decks I've ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! The funny thing about this deck is it was entirely reprinted in the Mega Tins, which makes this deck extremely cheap, and it's really helpful for anybody who wants to build it because the majority of the stuff was actually reprinted as commons in the tin, which makes the most expensive cards in the entire deck actually Melffy Puppy and Melffy Caddy, which is really amazing for this deck, sitting at around 25 cents. Everything else in the deck is 25 cents or less, making it one of the cheapest decks on the entire list, which is really helpful. I almost included it in another list, but the Megatins hadn't come out yet, so I'm including it here because you can include cards like Rescue Cat, which is a fantastic card for this deck, and that card is sitting at around $5, but with how cheap this particular core is, it totally fits into the budget. You can also include really awesome tag cards in this deck like Obedience School to let you special summon additional monsters from the deck while you don't control another monster, giving you instant link 3s or even going into other beast monsters that you can use those cards as material. So this deck is a great deck if you're trying to pick up a really cheap core, and you can mix it with a lot of other decks, which is super helpful for this particular budget. Coming in at number 3, guys, we have a deck that has godly potential and will be looked at favorably in your budget, and that deck is Sacred Beast. Sacred Beast is a great deck if you're looking for a budget build, and just for the nostalgia alone, I love the way this deck plays, summoning out humongous dark versions of the Egyptian god cards, originally released in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and there was an entire season based around these 3 behemoths of monsters. I love the way this deck plays, summoning out big monsters sitting at 4,000 attack points each, and one of them can go up into infinite attack points, which is absolutely crazy. Summoning out all 3 of them to your side of the field will let you summon out an extremely powerful fusion monster, one of the most powerful ones in the entire game, which is Armityle the Chaos Phantom, which comes out at 10,000 attack points, which is just absolutely crazy. I love the way the deck plays because basically you're just trying to throw out really large monsters and overwhelm your opponent with the sheer size of those monsters, and it's super nostalgic to have a deck completely based around them. Now, originally they did have a structure deck, but they've been recently reprinted in the Megatins, even rarity bumping some of the cards from originally common cards up to ultra rare versions of those particular cards. But the most expensive card, unfortunately, did not get reprinted in the Megatins, and that is Awakening of the Sacred Beast, sitting at about $1.50, which is still an amazing card for this archetype. Being an N archetype, skill drain is just absolutely crazy for this deck, depending on the amount of Sacred Beasts that you have currently on your field with different names, which is just absolutely amazing. I love being able to summon out Uriah, Haman, and Raviel in this deck because in deck profiles that I have on my channel, you can actually summon out all 3 of them in a single game, which is just crazy to me that you can summon out all 3 of them in one deck. Your wallet won't be seeing stars when you try and pick up the deck in the number 2 slot, and that deck is Starry Night. Now, this deck is a really awesome deck that's actually based around a super awesome boss monster called Starry Night Starry Dragon. And I really love what this card does, and I'm actually going to read to you guys what this card does because I have it right here in my hand, and because it's just absolutely crazy what it does. This card has the ability that if this card is normal or special summoned from your hand, you can target 1 card on the field and destroy it, which is not a once per turn effect. The entire deck revolves around bouncing this particular card on the field back to your hand and then resummoning it over and over and over again to be able to pop cards continuously on the field until you finally run out of effects between bouncing it from the field back to the hand. It also pretty much eats dark monsters, which is really amazing because of another effect on this card, that it has the ability that it can be destroyed by battle with a dark monster or by a dark monster's effect, which is absolutely crazy that it's pretty much immune to dark monsters' effects, which is really amazing. It also has the ability that once per turn at the start of the damage step, if this card attacks an opponent's monster, you can banish that opponent's monster until the end phase, and this card can make a 2nd attack in a row. That is an absolutely crazy boss monster, and this card is actually the most expensive card on the entire deck list, which is really cool because it's sitting at $1. Everything else in the entire deck is around 50 cents or less, making it a super budget deck. This deck also has 2 in-archetype searchers as well, which is our Starry Night Rael and Starry Night Bellflame, which is a great card, or Bellfire, which is an absolutely crazy cool card for this deck to be able to search everything from the entire deck. And this deck is really, really budget and a really fun deck to play around with, because Starry Night Starry Dragon is actually a retrain of a super old card that you never would know what it is unless you actually know the OCG name of Starry Night Starry Dragon, which is actually Radiant Ciaru, which is based on a super old vanilla card, Ciaru, that has been retrained into Starry Night Starry Dragon, which is just absolutely crazy. I'm not pulling a prank on you guys when I tell you that the best deck that you can pick up for $25 sitting in the #1 slot is actually Prankids. Now this deck is a deck that is absolutely insane. It's actually just recently become a budget deck because of its reprint in El Dorado, which is super helpful for this deck if you're looking for a meta deck that you can pick up for a really cheap budget. I love this deck because it actually just floats into so many different cards, and primarily being a fusion and a link based deck. The reason I say that the entire deck floats into one another is because when you use your Prankids monsters as materials for fusion or link plays, they actually will special summon another Prankids monster from the deck. Now they all are hard once per turn, but you have 4 in-deck monsters to actually float into one another, so you have all sorts of really crazy plays in this deck. I love the fact that this deck is so budget because you can summon out some amazing boss monsters like your copy of Prankids Rip Roar and Roaster, which is basically a Harpy's Feather Duster, which is really crazy. The card is actually the most expensive card in the entire deck, sitting at about $4. Everything else in the entire deck is around $1 or less, with all the Prankids monsters being about 25 cents each out of El Dorado, and even getting gold rarity bumps, which is really cool. I really love the way the deck plays because it constantly is recycling by using your link monsters and your fusion monsters to tag back into your other monsters in the graveyard, and it even has its own in-archetype fusion spell in the form of Prankids Pandemonium, which is a great card for this deck because it helps out going into all of your crazy plays. I also really love this deck because it even was recently meta and had to be put on the list a little bit, where they took their Link 1 Meow Meow Mew and actually put that card to 1 on the last list, which is really crazy that they actually did. And this deck is still thriving as a rogue deck right now, which is really cool about this deck. So anyways, guys, that's it for all the decks for $25. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad. And if I missed any decks, definitely comment them down below so we can all see what kind of decks you guys play for $25 and give me ideas for other decks that we could use in this particular slot. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.